Welcome to the Go to War podcast with your host, John Paramore. Now it's time to go to war. Hey everybody, welcome to the Go to War podcast. I'm your host, John Paramore, here with you for another, 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever we decide to do. And I want to just kind of give you a brief rundown. For most of you guys, you've listened to this before, but I always do this at the beginning just to kind of pepper spray you with some information that you're going to need to remember as we go through this podcast together. So a couple things. This is kind of a give back project for me. This is something that I do for free. We don't get paid ads or sponsors or any of that fun stuff to give us money for this. So why I'm telling you that is I want you guys to if you get value out of this, I want you to like this. I want you to leave a review. I want you to leave a rating. I want you to share this with other people and get it out there. And the main reason for that is the stuff that we cover in these podcasts is not high level stuff. Like I get into the granular side of the podcast and give you real information that I know you're going to be able to use and take away and apply today and get something from it. So I want you to share that with other people. I don't want you to hoard that to yourself and just hold on to it. I definitely want you to use it, but I also want you to share it with other people if you find value in it. So the other caveat that I want to throw out there for you is from time to time, especially when I get really involved in these podcasts and I'm really passionate about what we're talking about, sometimes I'll drop some salty language. And if you're easily offended by language, this is probably not going to be the podcast for you. This is going to be something where you're going to end up butthurt. You're going to end up leaving a negative review. You're going to tell other people not to listen to this. And I would just assume you avoid all of that animosity flowing through your system and just turn this off right now. This is not going to be for you. All right. For the rest of you guys that are left, what I'm going to talk about today is you're going to find that you can apply what we discussed today in so many areas of your life. And what I'm going to talk about today is this phrase or this term called critical tasks. And if you're saying to yourself right now, oh, I already know what critical tasks is, I've heard something like this before, I want you to hold your damn horses for just a minute, because the way that I break down critical tasks and the way that they need to be executed are probably not like something you've heard before. And the way that I define critical tasks and the way that I've always used them and the way that they've helped me both professionally and personally are tasks that are non-negotiable, that must get done in order to achieve some of the things that I really am chasing, am after, I've set a goal for, I've set a target for. There are things in my life that I want to accomplish. And so I'm gonna preface this and kind of tell you a little bit of a story as to why I started using critical tasks. Okay. For a long time, I was really, really good at writing out like a to-do list, making a to-do list. You know, as well as I do, when you start getting into the task of writing a to-do list, it never ends, right? Most people take out the things that they feel like doing the most, and the things that they don't feel like doing tend to linger on that to-do list, and they end up going day to day or week to week or month to month, or they eventually just fall off the task list or the to-do list and never get done. And the difference for me, I was one of those people. I was one of those people that constantly wrote a to-do list. I would write the to-do list out. I would do the things on the to-do list that I actually felt like doing, and then everything else I would either try to delegate it out to someone else on my team who didn't want to fucking do it either, or I would just delegate it to somebody who could do it, and then it was like out of sight, out of mind. But the reality is, here's the difference between something that you put on a to-do sheet and a critical task. A critical task is something that moves you forward in like the most deliberate way possible, right? And a critical task is not something that you do every single day, just kind of in your subconscious. So it's not taking a piss. It's not going poop in the morning. A critical task is something that you look at and say, okay, what has to happen in my life and my fitness and my health and my relationships in order to move these things forward? What has to happen in my business in order to move my business forward? These become critical tasks, right? And here's the crazy part. Throughout a year and a year's time, it's possible that you might only do 25, 30, 50, if you're really good, critical tasks throughout an entire year, right? So that's the difference. To-do list, you're just writing a whole bunch of shit that comes into your mind and you're like, I got to take this stuff out because it is important, but it doesn't necessarily make it urgent. It's not the one thing that's going to move your business like the needle forward, right? It's just stuff that has to get done. And I will tell you, because we have several clients that are business owners, I would say most of the time business owners get caught up in the busy, right? They get caught up in the busy of the day and they prioritize the busy as like what needs to get done. But what they fail to do then is break themselves away from the busy and engage in the critical task, right? They fail to engage in the critical task. And so I'm going to talk to you about how do you find the critical tasks in your business today and your personal life today? And then how do you go about creating time? Because that's what's it about. It's delegating and creating time to knock out those critical tasks. So let's start with some of the basic stuff. What is a critical task? That's something that you might be asking yourself. What's a critical task? Okay, so the fastest way that I know to bring people to the reality and understanding of what is a critical task, where you sit today, I've asked you to do this before. If you go back and listen to some of the other podcasts, if you've done the work, cool. If you haven't, I'm going to recap a little bit for you right now. Today, where you sit today, I don't care if you're listening to this in your car or home or on a computer, whatever the case may be. As you sit where you are today, one thing I want to ask you is, are you exactly where you want to be? Are you exactly where you want to be? Are you exactly where you want to be in your fitness? Are you exactly where you want to be in your health, in your relationships, in your business, in your bank account, any area of your life? I want you to ask yourself, are you exactly where you want to be today? And then I'm going to tell you that, give you some truth here, that where you are today is exactly where you want to be up until this very moment. It might not be exactly what you desire, but all of your actions up until this very moment have led you to right where you are. Okay. So you have to combine where you are and where you desire to be and understand and start to break down the differences of the two places. So let me give you an example. Several years ago, actually 10 years ago, nearly to the month, not necessarily to the day, I found myself signing some paperwork in an attorney's office to file bankruptcy. And in that space right there, what I had to understand was that the bankruptcy was not happening to me. The bankruptcy was something that was a result of something that I did and had made a critical error somewhere along the way in my business, actually in my personal life as well, that led me to that desk and that time where bankruptcy was being filed. Also in that moment, had I had this information that I'm about to give you, I would have very quickly been, instead of it taking 3 years for me to completely recover, meaning mentally recover from the process of bankruptcy, I would have been able to speed that time frame up dramatically. And what I love about once you learn how to identify critical tasks, I don't give a shit what kind of hole you find yourself in. I don't care if you find yourself broke. I don't care if you find yourself on the verge of divorce. I don't care if you find yourself just in a really awkward, sticky situation, or maybe you're just stagnant where you are and you want to change that. This critical task thing is going to be the differentiator. So going back to the bankruptcy thing, 3 years after my bankruptcy and I got my head back on, what I learned was that, okay, I want to make sure that whatever I create going forward doesn't ever end up in me back to that space again, number one. And number two, I want to accelerate dramatically the prior years, the 10 plus prior years of being a successful business owner. I don't want it to take 10 more years to get back to that same spot. So what I began doing was I began thinking about, okay, where I am right now and where I want to go in the next 90 to 120 days, what are the critical tasks that must be done in order to get me there faster? Now, again, I want to make sure I drive home. These are not things you put on a to-do sheet. These are critical tasks. So let me give you an example. A critical task might be something like, if you're sitting right now, and I'll use business as an example, and you don't have a regular flow of consistent sustainable, reliable lead generation coming into your business and organization. Your number one critical task that you have in front of you is you've got to fix that shit. You've got to break down what it's going to take to make sure that you have regular, predictable, sustainable, reliable lead generation coming into your organization. Why? Because on a critical level, without those things, your business dies. On a critical level, without those things, you begin to think this begins to take up so much space in your life every single day that you're thinking about it constantly. I wish I had more leads. How do I get more leads? What's the fastest way to get more leads? Do I need to hire somebody? But until you define the critical task that it's going to take. So your critical task at the high level is I need to get more predictable, sustainable, and reliable lead generation. Your predictable task on the secondary basis is what must happen in order to make that happen. What must happen? And then you begin to break things down. You begin to break things down with what is my current level of skill? Well, my current level of skill is I don't know shit about generating leads. Okay, that's at least you're being honest with yourself, right? And then if you look at it and go, my current level of skill is I don't know how to run a Facebook ad. My current level of skill is I don't know how to run an Instagram ad. I don't know how to handle Google AdWords or whatever the case may be. So the critical task then becomes identify the one area that you could control or learn, okay? So let's just say, for shits and grins, you own a company and you feel like the fastest way for you to get leads, because you've done some research, you've done some market analysis, you've talked to some people, you've had conversations with people that actually know what the hell they're doing, and if you need some of those people, reach out to me, I'll connect you. But you talk to people that know what the hell they're doing, and you've asked them, hey, based on what I sell or based on the service that I deliver, what's the fastest way for me to begin to get leads? And they've identified a spot for you and said, this is the fastest way to get it. And that moment, you're faced with two choices. In the moment, you can either get a course or get a mentor that can teach you how to do that, or you can outsource that critical task to someone with a proven track record that can net you a result. Okay? And I promise you what happens in this stage most of the time, people get so caught up in where they are and the stories as to why they can't make something else happen that they become paralyzed and they begin to mentally masturbate on how hard this is going to be. They put some big fucking story into the mix of it, and then they take zero action. And when you identify a critical task, that takes the thing from like, oh, maybe I feel like doing it, maybe I don't feel like doing it, and it says this thing is no longer negotiable. This is a non-negotiable thing that must happen in order for me to move my business from this space to this space. And I don't care if that, I'm going to give you like something really helpful, right? Every single business that I've ever been in breaks down to 5 components. It breaks down to marketing. It breaks down to sales. It breaks down to operations. It breaks down to fulfillment. And then it breaks down into hiring or recruiting. Okay. If you can create critical tasks at the beginning around fulfilling those things, and you have to do them in order. You've got to solidify your marketing. You've got to solidify your ability or someone else's ability to sell. You've got to solidify your capacity to produce, your operations side. You've got to solidify your capacity to fulfill. And then on the hiring side, you've got to start to understand how to bring really fucking smart people and put them around you so that they can do things that you can't do, okay? So maybe that's part of your critical task. Maybe your critical task is just to understand the components of the business that you're going to need to operate. Maybe your critical task is to build an org chart. Maybe your critical task is to build framework around how the business is going to work long term. But what I can tell you is if you just stay in the cycle every single day of like, I'm going to create a to-do list, I'm going to rock out this to-do list, it's going to be solely based on how I feel, then you need to, that's not entrepreneurship, that's not business ownership, that's called running a hustle, and that's great. But I can tell you like, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to anybody who's disabled or whatever the case may be, and David's going to be like, oh shit, he's about to go off the rails. But what I'm telling you here is, for those of you running a hustle, the problem with that is when you don't have people around you and you're just running a hustle, if some shit happens to you and you get hit by God forbid, you get hit in like going through an intersection, you get T-boned, Next thing you know, you find yourself in a wheelchair, you can't use your arms or your legs or whatever the case may be, and you haven't built a legit company, your company dies. That's just raw, honest truth. And these critical tasks need to be things like, what's it going to take to bring in predictable lead generation? Maybe you're really good at sales and you just need really good leads. And if you had really good leads, then your sales would skyrocket and you could start putting money in place to then staff operations people and staff fulfillment people and build this thing into a legit company. But if you don't get your mind and your focus around these critical tasks and all you're doing is kind of what you feel like doing every single day, you're not going to end up having something long-term that you can be proud of that's going to sustain the lifestyle that you want to live. You're going to be stuck in this grind and hustle world of hustle, which is a fucking trap. Okay? So I told you, like, these things that I give to you guys are legit things that I use in my business every single day. They're things that my clients use in their business every single day. They're things that when I speak, the people in the audience take away and use in their businesses every single day. And so now here's what else I want to show you. These critical tasks apply to you personally too, especially those of you who are married, have kids, in some type of committed relationship. Maybe you have shitty health. Maybe you have spirituality issues, whatever the case may be. The same thing applies. You have to take inventory of exactly where you are, and you've got to, like, let's just talk about the health side for a second, okay? If you take a critical, if you look at your health on a legit level of where you are right now, and you ask yourself, how many times you've been to the doctor in the last 3 years? How many times have you gotten sick in the last 3 years? How many times have you needed medication in the last 3 years, right? You just take a quick inventory, and if that's a lot, if that's a big number to you, the critical task to you is you got to get yourself fucking healthy. You got to stop eating like a child. You got to start eating like a grown-ass adult, eating healthy food, eating stuff that matters that's going to help your immune system keep you stronger, and you got to get your ass moving. And I don't care what that looks like. You got to walk 10 minutes a day, walk 20 minutes a day, but you got to start somewhere, right? So the critical task, especially for those of you who own businesses who are in really, 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 really fucking poor health, your critical task is you've got to change that, because there's this old phrase and saying that goes, you can't lead people beyond your capacity to lead yourself. And if you can't even lead yourself in your own fitness, how in the hell are you going to lead other people to the promised land of like where they want to go? Why are they getting into business with you when they look at you and go, you can't even lead yourself? You can't even lead yourself in a fitness level. You can't even lead yourself as a husband. You can't lead yourself as a wife. Whatever the case, why would they trust you when clearly you have issues with self-trust, right? So the critical task that you must develop is, for me, like, I'm just going to tell you, like, the main thing for me is, like, if I close my eyes every single day and I ask myself one simple question, am I the best version of me that I could possibly be? Am I the best version of me that I could possibly be? And you guys have heard this maybe in some of the other podcasts, right? I told you, I ask myself this all the time. The critical tasks at this point, because I'm so conditioned to it, the critical tasks begin to show up. You got to do this. 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 And so, like I told you kind of at the beginning of this episode, for some people, it might be 30 that they do every year. For some people, it might be 50 that they do every year. I will tell you, for me, critical tasks every week are usually between 5 and 10 critical tasks every week. There's a reason why I'm building this fucking company at a ridiculous pace that most people have not ever seen. Because for me, I don't jack around in the busy to do. I don't play around in the busy to do. I delegate my busy to-do list. I don't play around in that space. I hire people if I find that there's no one out left to delegate to, then I bring people in and I staff people. And some people are like, oh, John, you're just fortunate to have money to be able to hire people. Fuck you. I work my ass off and did exactly what I'm telling you guys to do, to stockpile some money, put some money away, start getting regular lead generation in, start doing really good sales, all this stuff myself, then starting to hire one person and then another person and begin to delegate and begin to leverage their willingness and ability to do things better than I can. And then all of a sudden this thing becomes become like a two-headed monster all on its own. It starts to take over. And then the same thing that I do on my own and the critical task side, my team does in the critical task side. So they diagnose critical tasks. They've got to get things And we have meetings about this stuff all the time. What are the critical tasks you're doing for the week? How is that going to move the needle? If it's just a to-do sheet, we get rid of that shit, or we delegate it off, or we get it out at times that aren't peak times. Okay? But the point to all of this is there's a massive difference between running a to-do list every day and you, especially if you're a business owner, being focused on the tasks that are absolutely critical to move the company forward. And so what's the fastest way, right? Because I always give you guys takeaways, homework, whatever you want to call it. What's the fastest way to know if you're really executing critical tasks or you're living in the world of busy, hyper-reacting? Simple. You do a time study. You do a time study. What is a time study? Simple. If you want me to send you the time study that we've created, I'm happy to do that. Just send me an email, jon@thesmashco.com. Okay. And I will send you, our time study. Or you can do this for 4 days straight, every 30 minutes, write down exactly what you do. For 4 days straight, every 30 minutes, write down exactly what you do. And then at the end of those 4 days, I want you to go back through those sheets and put a plus by the stuff that you would deem as a critical task that legitimately move the needle forward inside your company or your body or your health or your personal life. And I want you to put a minus by all the stuff that you look at and said that can be delegated. That's not a critical task. That's a to-do something. That's something that you would normally put on a to-do sheet, or it's a hyper response to something that you did, but it is not a critical task. And then what I would love to do, or what I want you to do, is start to plan your days around only doing things around your critical tasks first. Why first? Because the majority of us only have a certain amount of like what I label as raw creative energy every single day. For me, my raw creative energy is from the hours typically of 8 a.m. until about 1 p.m. That's my raw creative energy state. After 1 p.m., I begin to go into this like, not a vegetative state, but it's kind of like a state of like where I need to do mindless tasks. I need to, at that point in time, I'm sending email responses that don't need me to critically think about something. I'm sending text message responses. I'm taking content that I wrote earlier in the day and I'm posting content. I'm taking, like photos and moving them around. I'm going for a walk and shooting Instagram videos or whatever the case may be. It moves to a secondary level. And then from about the hours of 7 p.m. until I go to bed, I'm in a basic relaxed meditative state where I'm hanging out with my kids and I'm hanging out with my wife and I'm just doing stuff with my family. So here's what I can tell you. I promise that those of you who listen to this and take real action, this is a game changer. This is stuff that I do every single day. This is stuff that I do every single week. This has been the biggest differentiator from me being able to take my company from one place to another in a year to every single 90 days, changing the trajectory of where things are going and how things are going to be. So here's the deal. This is called the Go to War podcast for a reason. This is a mindset. This is one of the biggest things that you have to deliver and you have to learn and you have to understand, and the mindset that it takes to be able to go to war inside of your business and inside of your life every single day. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with me for a little bit today. And I promise you, I can't reiterate this enough. If you just do this little bit of work that I've been talking about towards the end of this podcast and you actually do the work, this is a game changer for you. I promise you that. So here's what I want you to do. Do the work. Send me messages. Let me know how it's going for you. Give me the feedback. Leave a review. All that good stuff. And most of all, I want you guys to continue to go to war. Take care.